Hey guys, welcome to the first episode of The Final Couple. My name is Kat,
And my name is Kenny.
and if you're here, you're probably into all things horror just like us. On this channel, we dive into things that are unsettling and creepy.
We like to watch the scary ones, the really good ones, and the bad ones that are goofy.
So, we're going to be kicking it off tonight with a film called The Last Straw. This movie came out in 2023, and it is a psychological thriller that gave us some things to talk about. So, without further ado, let's get into it.
So The Last Straw is 2023 horror thriller film, and it was directed by Alan Scott Neal. This was actually his first real, major motion picture movie. Before this, I think he had done some short films, and really his claim to fame was TV shows. In particular, he did a lot of the directing and casting for Euphoria.
Yeah, and I remember you telling me that, and when you did, I thought that that made a lot of sense given the style of this movie. I have never seen Euphoria, but I've seen some clips, and so it this movie does give off that almost angsty teen, but with the realism factor, which I really enjoyed in this movie, is that he was able to portray each character throughout the film in a realistic way that gave you a lot of empathy for each actor.
Yeah, and another thing about this movie is the music was pretty good. It had a
Yeah.
good score. Definitely had some 80s kind of synth pop throughout
Right.
it.
There was like an almost like an 80s vibe to it.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure. And
Not
it's
like completely, but there was something about it that gave it,
almost giving like homage to the 80s.
yeah,
And it seemed like it was filmed in somewhat modern times, but
it was,
just
yeah.
the score and, it had some of that synth pop kind of stuff that you would hear in 80s films.
So, just to give you a little bit of a gist of this movie, if you haven't seen it, it follows the character Nancy Osborne. She is about to start her night shift at her diner, at the diner that her dad owns, and she has been tormented by masked intruders. And from there, the tension builds, which it builds in an unexpected way, which is kind of cool about this movie is that you think you know what's going on, but you really don't. And it just kept us hooked the entire time.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about the way the movie started, and I was almost getting like the Strangers vibes at first because of the
The
mess.
Strangers,
Yeah.
yeah.
So and that's a really good movie if you guys haven't seen that. And it's actually nothing like that movie. And I think
The
that
first one's really good. I just
but
want to
yeah, just the
clarify.
first one. You can just everything else is shit.
Maybe the second one, but anyway.
Yeah, we're getting off course here. But and kind of to what Kat was saying earlier, there's a lot of misdirection. So when the movie starts off, I was getting that vibe. This is just going to be your classic, you know, guys in masks terrorizing,
Yeah.
but the mask actually looked kind of similar to something like The Purge or Strangers. So that's a vibe I was getting, which I'm all for. It would have been cool, but it really takes a twist. And that's kind of where I wanted to talk about the next point. So this movie does something that's called the Rashomon effect. I'd actually never heard of it. I had to look it up. And essentially, this is the effect where you see the same story from different perspectives, from characters' different perspectives. And basically, it allows you to see some conflicting testimony of what's actually reality of the situation. A good example of a movie that does this is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Do you remember at the end of the movie? I'm sure everyone has seen that. So,
Maybe.
no spoilers here. If you haven't seen it, then I don't even know what to say. But at the end of the movie, they use time and magic to kind of relive events from different perspectives, and you're kind of putting the pieces together of like, oh, I saw that earlier, but it didn't make sense, but now I kind of get it. And so I think that's just a good example. It's a movie that we've all seen, but they really use that perspective. And honestly, I don't see that a lot in horror movies. That is something I see in books a lot, and other movies, but never seen that in horror movies. So it uses this effect very well. I think it's probably what worked best with the whole film is
Yeah.
the execution of this, and it really gives there's a lot of misdirection on who is the good guy, who is the bad guy, who is actually stalking this girl,
Yeah.
and why. And there's they use this theory or this Rashomon effect very well to execute that and keep you on the edge of your seat and keep
Yeah.
you guessing.
And I will say that that was one thing that I really loved about that movie because I don't think I'd ever really seen a movie like that that had the Rashomon effect. I may have, but it's not very common. And like you said, the way they executed that was so seamless. Like it wasn't choppy, it
Yeah.
didn't feel forced. It flowed really well.
And it was actually shocking whenever you kind of learn more about the next perspective.
Right. So spoilers. Um, Go ahead. I'll let you tell me about your first spoiler.
So in the movie, there is a scene about halfway through where Nancy, who's our main character, our
Mhm.
final girl, if you will, and she's in the diner, and it's a 24/7 diner. It's the middle of the night, no one's coming in. She's a teenage girl, and she puts some music on. She puts a pop song on. She just starts dancing, and we've probably all done that, right? No one's around, music's on, dancing with the mop, that classic scene.
Yeah, we've all done that.
Yeah, and and when I first watched it, I think that those scenes can be kind of hit or miss. It could
Yeah.
be kind of cringe, and it wasn't
You-
cringe, but
It wasn't like completely
yeah, it
cringe,
was just
but
like
I didn't hate it. I definitely could have.
didn't hate it.
Okay,
But
thanks.
why I'm bringing this up is what worked really well is you had this scene, like I said, the whole song plays, she dances, and it gets interrupted by basically someone at the window. Something scary happens, and she looks and she's like, "Oh, what's that?"
Yeah.
And kind of going back to that Rashomon effect of different perspectives and things happening. Whenever the other characters in the movies, whenever the other characters in the movie are going through their perspectives, the director uses this dance scene to kind of show relative to where everyone is at.
Right.
So
That's true.
when you first watch the dance scene, you're
You're
like,
just
"This
like,
is kind of
okay, it's
wrong.
just this girl
Why are they
dancing.
showing this?" But
Yeah.
it really like helps you navigate and have a perspective of the timeline of everyone else throughout the movie, and
Yeah.
they use that repeatedly to kind of show you where you're at as far as like what's happening when you start seeing it through the other characters.
Right. I see where you were going with that, and I agree that that was a needed scene just for that timestamp when we do follow different perspectives. So, on the subject of perspectives, you are then going to be followed by the actual antagonist of the film, which you aren't really sure is the antagonist until you are sure it's the antagonist. It is played by the actor Taylor Kowalski. Am I saying his name right? I don't want to butcher the name, but he is played by that person, and his name is Jake Collins in the film. He did a great job, by the way, being the uh, I don't know. I want to say grungy guy. How would you explain
Well,
him? He's like a
there's something that you should definitely know is that this character, and it's kind of a shock because at first they portray him as the victim, as a
and you
really
definitely feel sorry
you
for
feel sorry
him
for him.
when he gets fired from the job, which is what leads him into this the unfortunate events where he starts really becoming this villain of the show. But yes, you start to feel sorry for him. He's this guy. You get the sense that he's somebody who grew up in a maybe not the best living situations, dealt the bad hand in life, and he has a brother with Down syndrome who you're also feeling sorry for because he is essentially using his brother as like a shield when he's doing his evil
You
bidding.
find out really that he is a serious drug addict.
Right. And so
He's
you're going through a wave of emotions right now because you're just like, oh, I feel bad for this guy. But then you're like, oh, this is not good. And then he's using his brother. And then you're like, oh, this is really just a messed up situation that we're witnessing right now.
Yeah, and him being a drug addict is a big part of the movie
Yeah.
because he is the villain of the movie.
Yeah. That's
And
essentially what gets him to that
and that's
point.
kind of the question I had is like, is he obviously he's a villain, but is this just a drug rampage? where he got fired. He takes a lot of drugs. He's a bad guy, obviously, but would he have done this without the drugs? Or was he just always a really bad, evil guy and the drugs just was some
Right.
fuel to the fire?
Which really just makes this movie a little realistic in a way, is because it's like you don't know, this guy could just be having like a really, has been just dealing with all these struggles his whole life, and then today was just the straw that broke the camel's back. That
And
doesn't
it kind
make
of
this
feels like that.
yeah, that's kind of what I was what I was trying to say, was that yeah, you don't actually know, because we only know a very small portion of this person's life, but from what you can feel and see given his performance, was that he's just not been in the best situations. And now, I mean, he's obviously been connected to the drug deal game, because he was able to find the drugs, and the way that he mentions it too on the phone, he's like, okay, yeah, I'll pay this time. The
Yeah.
way it seems like this has been an ongoing situation for this person. So I don't know. I think he's had moments of leading up to being this drug addicted, um,
Yeah, and
raging
there's a few and
thing.
I I think it's him being a drug addict is essential for this movie for a couple different reasons. There's a really amazing scene whenever he is driving home from work and he has his brother who has Down syndrome is driving. And he's using his brother to go pick up drugs. Looks like probably crystal meth, something you smoke out of a pipe. And an amazing scene where he's smoking meth in the passenger seat while his brother's driving. And
Yeah,
probably because this director worked on Euphoria,
right,
I'm just guessing, they were able to really, showcase what it really feels like to be intoxicated in a car.
right.
They use some of the movement, some of the lights, and I've never done hard drugs like
Right. I
that.
wanted to say, I just want for the record,
But
we've never
I
done
have
crystal
been
meth.
I have been the passenger in a car drunk. And I
Right.
have seen the cars move, and I have the way that the lights kind of blend
Yeah.
together, and they really encapsulated that very
And
well.
you're seeing it in a point of view, like the first person point of view of the brother who's driving, kind of watching, kind of, focusing on the road. Well, he's actually not point. It felt very point of view, but it's really us seeing this person and what it would be like. Actually, what it felt like was that we were also experiencing this psychedelic trip. You're focused in on him. He's talking about what he wants to do, and he's just like, kind of ranting. And yeah, the way it was portrayed was phenomenal to me, because I felt dizzy after watching that scene. I was like, oh wow, this really does feel like I'm messed up
And it
on some
also
drug,
shows
on
and kind of going
alcohol
back
or
to,
something.
like, is it the drugs or is he a bad guy? He starts ranting to really nobody,
That's really
maybe.
what's fueling him up.
Yeah, and he's ranting to his brother, but really just to himself. And he's, saying all these things like, like, I'm a good guy. I'm trying really hard. Like, why would she do this to me? Like, I'm just trying to get my stuff together. And then he said something, which was, people ask what, the biggest gateway drug is, and what it really is trauma.
So here you're starting to feel a little less sorry for this guy, especially when he gets to his destination, which is where the real masked intruders from the beginning of the movie, which we didn't really talk about that much, but when you first start the movie, there are masked intruders, um, that come in and just wreak havoc. And the protagonist, what's her name, Jessica Belkin, she ends up kicking them out. And so that's for the audience. It signals to the audience that these are going to be your main antagonists here. But now we're following this guy, Jake Collins, who actually goes to the little hideout where the original masked intruders were, and that's when things start to spiral out of control. They get into altercation, and the guy ends up taking the masks that the masked intruders had originally.
So, what I kind of got out of Jake's character is once it's established that he is the bad guy, he is a drug addict. Um, from that point on, he is essentially just manipulating people throughout the movie that we've already been introduced to. So he's manipulating his brother who has Down syndrome, trying to get him to essentially kill people for him and maybe even take the blame for some of these things.
Yeah.
He is manipulating his friends that worked at the diner, getting them involved into this whole murder scene, and they don't even know that he's already killed multiple people. Oh yeah,
It's
so
unfortunate. Yeah.
yeah, it's unfortunate.
So now you kind of get more of a feel of the movie. I want to skip to what really didn't work for me, which was the ending. Um, Everything was great. I actually really enjoyed the film. I think at the very end, we're now back to the protagonist's perspective. So Nancy Osborne, and we follow her through this journey of being completely tormented while she's just trying to work in the middle of the night, and yeah, completely terrified. Um, so things take a turn, people end up dying, more people end up dying, and it ends up going to Jake Collins. It's now between Jake Collins and Nancy Osborne. He then stabs her a few times and then just dips. So she's just on the floor bleeding out, and somehow gets the strength to find him at home, do something with the doorbell so that he's tricked into thinking that someone's at the door, and that's when she comes around and just slits his throat or something. Yeah, so that to me was very unrealistic, but I mean, it's a movie, right? Most things are
Yeah.
going to be unrealistic, but I just thought that they could have executed that a little bit better.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I feel like it was a movie where um, a lot of the tension was happening at the diner.
Mhm.
Obviously, they left for other scenes throughout the movie, but it felt a little bit like they were just trying to wrap it up at the end whenever um, Jake gets away and goes
Yeah.
back to his trailer, and then she, all of a sudden, she actually tricked him and she wasn't stabbed. She did this elaborate plan basically to save herself. And, I felt like they could have just ended it at the diner a bit more gracefully.
Yeah.
But instead, you have this extra like 15 minutes where, she gets in the car after, being stabbed and all this stuff, goes to his house, does this more elaborate kind of like final girl stuff to get her vengeance
Yeah.
on this guy, stabs this guy. Um, he says a kind of goofy one last line
No.
that I thought was just, not too
Unnecessary.
necessary. I guess my final thoughts on it is like the last 15 minutes was really not needed. And it was almost, I would be curious to know, was there another ending? And
Right.
maybe they, for whatever reason, they wanted to end it this way. And another reason I think that is when the movie ends, really good music throughout the whole film. But when it ends and the credits go, it just plays this like really
Obnoxious.
obnoxious pop song. And, not even hating on the song itself. I'm sure it's a fine pop song or whatever, but it just totally didn't match the vibe.
So overall, I would say The Last Straw was a pretty good film. I enjoyed watching it, and if you're someone who likes psychological thrillers with a bit of a twist, this could be worth checking out. Let us know in the comments below if you've seen this movie and what your thoughts are. We'd love to hear your perspectives. And that it concludes today's video.
All right, guys, thanks for watching. We are the final couple, and we will see you next time.